Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Lock and Load Show, broadcasting across the interwebs, and simulcasting on gun channels. We're going to talk about guns, freedom, and the truth until dawn. It's been a crazy week. Just a lot of stuff happening over the weekend. An entire continent, like I don't know, 51 million people or something like that, in South America had a power outage. Apparently, a hydroelectric facility was targeted, and in Argentina, and the countries that were without power for 14 hours was Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Brazil. So I hope those people have their preps together. I mean, 14 hours isn't, I guess you just don't know once it starts, something like that starts, you don't know how long it's going to be. Nobody has verified that it's a cyber attack, and nobody knows for sure what caused it. But same thing happened in Ukraine. The hydroelectric plant was targeted, and so it could have been Russia flexing their side. Maybe the Russian soccer team lost to like somebody from South America, or because I don't think Chile would cut it. Chile doesn't have that capability just because their team lost to the U.S. that day. So in the World Cup, I think Women's World Cup. I've been having fun watching that. I think the USA has a pretty good team for the women's team. But anyway, and of course we were talking in the pre-chat about oil tankers being having magnetic mines attached to them, and so there's 7 oil tankers in the Gulf were attacked, and there's you've probably seen, if you watch the news, of video of them on fire, and black and white footage. I don't know if it was night or just black and white of Iranian patrol boats trying to remove a dud from the hull of an oil tanker, probably because it had Iranian writing all over it because it was made in Iran. They made a dud. They're under a lot of economic pressure from U.S. sanctions because nobody can do business with them anymore without being targeted by the Treasury Department and thrown off of the SWIFT system. So people just aren't. And Iran is in big trouble just domestically. That I guess people just don't like living under dictatorships, and especially when their economy just, I mean, the Iranian rial took a nosedive. It's not worth anything anymore. So the world's a crazy place. I came along and I did some math, and I was texting some of the guys in on our phone texts that we talk about to text each other during the week, that basically if you're a prepper, you should probably know, if you go look on the internet, for every person, to survive for 1 year, you need 1 million calories. And so I did the math, and that comes down to, if you're just eating Mountain House stuff, it comes down to 432 cans, number 10 cans. And I just looking at my cans before I did the math, I thought, wow, I've got a lot of cans, number 10 cans of freeze-dried food. I'm good to go, but I don't have 432 cans. And that would cost a ton of money. And so it just kind of put me into the mode of just having a realistic assessment of how many months of food I've got set back, as opposed to how many I thought I had. But I just did the math of how many calories per can, and then divided by 1 million, and then So basically, you need 432 cans. I'm a bit short of that, so hopefully it won't be needed. But if it is, I think it helps to know exactly how many calories you have set back in your pantry. Um, and I did watch Alone for anybody who's into that stuff. They're in the Arctic, which is why I thought you guys in Michigan might be interested in it. Basically, they're in Canada in the Arctic at a lake. There's 10 contestants going for $500,000 around a lake Slavery, which was named after the slave Indians. That's actually a tribe called the Slavery Tribe. Oh, it's Slave Lake is what it is, but it's not because they were slaves. It's because they were the Slavery Indian tribe. That was their name. Don't ask me why. But so it's when it starts snowing, obviously in the Arctic, it gets cold. But the interesting things that I didn't know about was I'd never heard of a rabbit stick before. There wasn't a rabbit stick in the survival guide, the Air Force survival guide that I've been reading and studying. I think I talked about it or did a screen share of the U.S. Air Force survival manual off of Amazon. Now the screen share isn't working lately on Google Hangouts, but anyway, what it is, it's like about 2/3 of a boomerang. It's like basically figure out it's got one full side of the boomerang, and then it starts to go when it reaches like the point where it's where it's like it kind of looks like a B-2 bomber, right? It's got one wing, and then on the other half it just goes out like about a quarter of the way. So basically, what it's you can carve that out of a piece of wood that's kind of bent, that has where it bends when it turns like that. You just kind of make it a little aerodynamic, and apparently you can throw one of these rabbit sticks and with enough, if you have a little bit of practice at it, and you can use it for hunting if you don't want to make a gunshot sound, or if you don't have a gun, or if you just don't want to, if you can't risk the sound, it'll have, depending on how aerodynamically you carve it, they were on Alone, they claim that you could use it and actually hunt deer with it if you target the deer's leg, and you could break a deer's leg with it. So if that's the game animal you're hunting, but personally, I don't know why they called it a rabbit stick, unless they were using it to hunt rabbit. But it basically looked like going through the air like a boomerang that didn't boomerang, because it wasn't a full. It was just like I said, about, I don't know, 3/4 or 2/3 of a boomerang. Hey, Oklahoma, how you doing, man?
What's up, everybody? Sorry about the being in hiatus for a while. I've had a lot of
Family time stuff.
issues come up. Was that no? Um, I just had a lot going on trying to get things together for the upcoming fire season. Uh, it's just been a headache between that and my health problems. Uh, it's just been a headache here the last few weeks mostly.
When it rains,
Uh,
it pours, huh?
it rains, it pours. Not only the stuff that I've been dealing with, but also, you know, I've actually been promoted to chief.
Chief
Uh,
Oklahoma.
Chief Oklahoma Prepper. Yeah, I'm a fire chief now. So with great power comes great responsibility, and
I'm
I'm
here
telling you that is a headache. Um, I think the last time we talked about working on the 5 ton, and we are just days away from having it pumping and spraying water.
Oklahoma,
We're
we're hearing an echo through your channel.
it's weird. What about that? Is that any better?
I'm still hearing the echo off your channel.
I'm not.
Okay. Anything else? Is that better?
I'm still hearing it. I'll turn me off. I don't think it's me, but let's see, where's my mute button?
It shouldn't be you because I've got a headset on. So, is that any better there, Hawaii?
No, I still hear your echo through your channel.
Oh, that's weird.
Are your speakers on?
No, I've got a headset on.
But your speakers on anyway, because it sounds coming from somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm not hearing it on this end. I don't hear it.
Let me ask
No, I don't
the
have
external.
speakers on. Huh.
Let me ask. I think Steve is in the external. Do you hear an echo, Steve? Let me go look.
All right. But anyways,
Jesse James is there. He doesn't hear an echo. Okay.
Okay, so it's just you.
It's just me.
You're hearing things.
Okay. I think I know what to do.
Okay, go ahead and do that.
It's
But
done.
yeah, okay.
I fixed it. That's me. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. But no, I think the last time we talked, we were getting ready to work on a 5-ton. It turns out I went to another department and looked at theirs, see how it was plumbed out and everything, and see how their setup was. And turns out there's no way in hell we have a 5-ton. It's got to be a deuce because that 5-ton looks like it ate my deuce for breakfast. And no, it's but we're about 2 days away from filling it with water and spraying. Actually, yeah, and I've got a little bit of work to do tomorrow on that on the deuce until the mayor comes back in town because mayor. I'm not chief yet. He gave it to me. He's still the fire chief until some things get straightened out, things get put into order, and paperwork goes through and everything. But yeah, it's a headache taking on a job like this. But yeah, we've been working on trucks, trying to get grants, trying to get things situated to where we can start. I mean, we can go out and fight fire right now, but that deuce alone is taking a lot of our time. Plus, we're getting a new what we call a tender. You guys would call probably a tanker truck.
How many people are in your department?
We have the department that I'm chiefing is a very, very small community. It's not really a town per se. I mean, it really is it is. We have our own, we have our own town name and mayor and fire department, but we have about 12 people in our department. We have 4 trucks, 3 brush trucks and an engine. And we are in the process of getting a new tender water shuttle or water tanker. And we're going to sell off or auction off actually our engine to make room for the tender. And I know it sounds counterproductive, but the way we're producing the way we're plumbing out this tender, or hang it, the way we're building this deuce is it's going to double as an engine. It's going to hold a lot more water than the engine. And I think our engine only holds about 500 gallons, 400 or 500 gallons. The deuce will hold about 1,500 gallons.
Is
so
most of the work you guys do firefighting or EMS kind of stuff?
Actually, that's a good question, and that's what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. And that's what it really aggravates me on these new probies that we get that want to be firefighters. 90% of the work is actually working on trucks. And The other 10% for us is working fires. Um, in fact, we only answer medical calls if they are lift assist calls. But I am an EMT, so I think I'm going to start running first responder calls out of the fire trucks just to kind of help out with anything because
When you said 90% of the work was working on trucks, you mean like fixing trucks?
yeah, working on fixing trucks, um, building trucks, maintaining trucks because usually any fire we go to is probably going to be a very large fire and
Yeah, small fires just aren't fun.
well I, I wish we could go to small fires but a lot of people don't realize that a volunteer community a volunteer fire department for example everyone goes about their daily life as if normal. I mean, if no different. So anybody that's watching this, if you're not a volunteer firefighter and you wonder what it's like, just whatever you do on a daily basis, that's what you do. You get up at 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, you go to work, you work your 8, 10, or 12 hours, you come home. You do chores around the house, you do this, that, and the other, and that's it. But with a volunteer firefighter, you go home or you get up in the morning, you go to work your time, and you come home, and we may get a call on a fire, and it's your decision. At the end of the day, you make the decision whether or not you want to go. We're asking for a little bit of time, and it's not, we're not going to call you and say, hey, where are you at? Well, I'm at work. Well, you need to leave work now and come fight fire. That's not how things work. Right now in the town that I live in, tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or at 10 o'clock in the morning, I could call 911 and say, hey, there's a fire. And we'll be lucky if we get a response because everybody works, everybody has their own life. Um, we're not going to sit there and make you quit your job just to sit around and wait for fires all day. We just can't do that. Um, Now, some jobs, if you live or if you work here in town or close to town, then like a lot of the ranchers and farmers do. Heck, a lot of the ranchers and farmers have better fire trucks than we do, and they're put together with literally duct tape and baling wire. But
I was
I'm not.
thinking,
I am not exaggerating because, in fact, the Deuce, we just ripped out all the old plumbing that the original department had on it, and some of their whip lines were literally held together and mounted to that truck with duct tape, zip ties, and baling wire.
duct tape.
So,
I got a duct tape project I'm working on right now, but
yeah,
I got a video coming out. But I'll wait for that video to come out. I was just thinking I could have a lot of fun with what you just said because it's like so somebody calls up the fire department and they say we've got a small fire and they say well you just say well call us when it becomes a big fire
yeah.
because we don't
I
do
mean,
small fires.
I'd like to do that. I like a challenge, but here in Oklahoma, it doesn't take very long, but we get a call for a small fire. We get out there and it's already big. Even if I've actually in my old department in the town that I live in when I was a firefighter here, because the town I'm a chief at now is 5 miles away. It's a 5 minute drive. For those of you that live in the city, 5 miles is nothing. Um, Here in the country, it's not quite just right there. I mean, it's just right there, but it really isn't at the same time. But you know, even when I was on the fire department here in this town that I live in, um, I was actually working with my captain that day, helping him do some work on the ranch, and we were actually literally a block away from from the station when we got a call for a fire. Um, and it came across the radio as a small fire at this intersection. Somebody threw a lit cigarette out, or this, that, and the other. By the time we got to it with the high temperatures, high winds, low humidity, the lack of rainfall, it was no longer a small fire, but in the time it took us to drive a block, grab a truck and go 10-8, it was already, we had a mutual aid fire. And when I say mutual aid, I mean we have a mutual aid agreement with other cities around us that they come out and fight fire with us, without charging us. So it was a very, very large fire in a very short amount of time. Not only that, but also to mention, we have the largest fire district in the state of Oklahoma, at the department that I was in at the time. So that really was very hard for us to
So you
work on.
have conditions around you where fires can become larger rapidly because of
Very.
field conditions of people. Are
Uh,
people like not clearing out the vegetation after it becomes dead and dried up? And
no, I mean, if you think about it, I was on. I did some work today at the fire station on the Deuce until about 1:30, 2 o'clock, till we ran out of parts. Really, um, I came home, did a little bit of yard work, and then um, at about 7 o'clock, I got on the tractor and I brush hogged 3 acres. I got off that 3 acres right at 9 o'clock. And that's 3 acres. And if you think about it, some of these farmers and ranchers here own hundreds of thousands of acres. And if they let a pasture grow without having any grazing, any cattle on it to graze, and this, that, and the other, and they just let it go, that small 1 acre fire can grow up to be 150, 200 acres in a matter of minutes. Um, a lot of people see that, in California or Washington State or Oregon, or all these all these states that have big wildfires, large wildfires. They make 300 acres out to be, oh man, this is huge. 300 acres for us is nothing. I mean, I'm not trying to be a sarcastic or smartass or arrogant about it, but the difference between us here in Oklahoma and them up in the Midwest or the Northwest, um, they have a lot of forested area where they are. We don't. So that acreage, you know, a 3,000 acre fire here, we've got about 5 departments on it. A 3,000 acre fire in the Northwest, they've got about, they're calling forestry, and they're calling air single engine air tankers. They're calling Cessnas. They're calling, all these
I take it
air
you don't
tankers in.
in your fire department. But
We don't.
the interesting thing is that because you're the thing that you have to deal with is brush fires and tornadoes. I mean, in Hawaii, our problem is hurricanes, and the problem we're having with hurricanes right now is the weather is really nice.
Right.
We have pleasant weather. That's the problem because it's warm. Really, the really mild trade winds aren't blowing out the warm weather, and the warm. It's so warm. Not only do we not have to heat the pool, the ocean. We don't have to heat the ocean is like a jacuzzi right now. So
Wow.
hurricanes speed up when there's hot water. Okay, so,
Yes.
so the closer hurricane gets to Hawaii, instead of slowing down, it'll get faster. and
Right.
so we're more likely to get hit with the full force a hurricane now than ever because of all the pleasant weather. Because all the warm water is floating on top, and so we just entered hurricane season. Haven't had one yet, but beginning of the month was beginning of hurricane season, and so far nothing. But when it does happen, if the weather stays nice and pleasant like it is right now, it's going to be a bad one. Just hope we don't get a direct hit on a town, because they usually miss us either a little bit north or a little bit south because of the sea mountain rising from the bottom of the ocean up. But with the water as hot as it is right now, if a hurricane comes, it's not going to. They usually slow down too as they approach from like the Gulf of or the Gulf of what's that, Baja, whatever it is off of the west coast of Mexico. Zia Cortez, I don't know. But when they come up from Mexico with the El Nino, and they used to slow down because it's cold water as it gets closer to Hawaii, but now it's warm water, so they're gonna speed up. It's not gonna be good.
No, that's the same with tornadoes. I mean, once the weather's perfect for tornado activity, you're looking at outbreaks. You're looking at record outbreaks. This year, we've slowed down on tornado season, thankfully. But we've had a lot of tornado warnings. We've had, I think, just this season, and we're barely getting summer. We've had over 300 tornado warnings issued in Oklahoma alone. In fact, I want to say yesterday or day before, there was a tornado warning for Oklahoma City area. So it was really...
While you were there with your family?
Yeah. I was actually at my sister's house when I got notified of the tornado warning. It was actually Saturday because I got off work early and then was off Sunday because we ran out of a lot of stuff, and of course nobody's open on Sunday to work on fire trucks. So I got notified of the tornado warning about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then still we've had over 300 tornado warnings in the state of Oklahoma alone here in this season, give or take a few. Close to 300, if not over 300. But we've had a very active tornado season, and you've even called me a few times, and I was in the middle of doing radar, tracking storms on radar, and I mean, we've had a big tornado season this year. Luckily, out of the X amount of tornado warnings we've had, only a few of them have actually hit towns, and we've had very few deaths and structures destroyed. But it's just a matter of time. Every few years, we always get a large tornado that goes through more Oklahoma. It's always more.
Did you watch any of that Alone, the new season of Alone yet?
I have not. I'll have to see if it's on Hulu or...
Have you ever heard of a rabbit stick before?
Yes.
No? I thought you might.
It's a Native American hunting tool it's a traditional Native American hunting tool that was used mainly to hunt small game, stuff like that. Actually,
show that they could hunt a deer with it. If they would just aim it and try and break the deer's leg with that.
Yeah, and then go up and dispatch the deer with a knife or something like that. And actually, here in the state of Oklahoma, as a Native American, our hunting rights have actually been given back to us. And our primitive hunting tools, such as the longbow, atlatl, and rabbit stick, and also blowgun, have actually been allowed as hunting weapons in the state of Oklahoma.
Isn't that just ironic that like what white people tell the Indians that they can now hunt with an atlatl or a rabbit stick?
Yeah.
Gee, thanks a lot for nothing,
Yeah, that's fine and dandy. I'd love to. I actually have been looking at atlatls and wanted to try to build one, and I've kind of semi built one, but it wasn't very great.
You could do a
But
rabbit stick. Those look pretty easy to carve. I mean, it was just a matter of
yeah,
practicing
it's
with it.
just yeah, and then the time and the kind of wood. Here you either have a hardwood or a softwood, so that determines a lot as well. Here in Oklahoma, if you're wanting to hunt with a rabbit stick, mesquite wood would be the ideal type of wood to use as a rabbit stick to carve it
Why,
out with.
why would you pick mesquite wood?
Because most woods, as they age, uh, like pecan or hackberry, this, that, and the other, they often rot. With mesquite, as as uh, as it ages, it only gets harder. Mesquite is ideal for a lot of things. We use, bodark or horse apples or um, Osage orange, whatever you want to call it, is all from a bodark tree. That's another wood that would be ideal for making a rabbit stick because as the wood ages, the wood actually becomes almost as hard as steel. It's very hard to imagine, but I mean, I've got some chunks of mesquite that I cannot split for nothing because when I got it, it was already too hard to do anything with. Um, so it's really something like that is very very ideal for that kind of work, that kind of job, or
It struck me as a useful kind of an item because it doesn't make like any noise like a firearm would or something. So if you needed to not to
yeah,
make noise,
you're right. But there's a lot of movement to go along with it. Whereas, for example, my crossbow, all I have to do is pull a trigger. Um,
as long as you got bolts, you're good to go.
yeah. Um, but with a atlatl and darts, a a rabbit stick or longbow, even a compound bow, there's still a lot of movement involved in all that. With a rabbit stick and a atlatl, you're pretty much, of course, with a rabbit stick, you're throwing the rabbit stick at something, and so you've got to be close enough to you're going to hit it dead on, within not yards but feet. With an atlatl and darts, the atlatl is actually an extension of your arm, and the darts, if you could imagine a 6 foot dart, is what they're properly called as a dart. That dart is basically a spear, and you're basically spearing an animal. But that atlatl, you're giving a little more thrust, and you're extending your arm's length. And as you come and you start to break with that atlatl, you're actually flicking or flinging that atlatl out, and that dart gets a little more velocity with it. So
Well,
in a longbow or even a compound bow,
it
go
just
ahead.
it just hit me when I was watching Alone that like that's something that a rabbit stick is something that almost anybody could make. It looked to me
Yeah,
out of materials. If they're in a survival situation or something and they needed a weapon to hunt game, that's like something that anybody could make. And I had never even heard of it before I saw that. So I'm glad I watched Alone, uh,
yeah.
the last episode. Have you finished watching all the Hell and High Water stuff? Because I know Squib watched it. Were you
Hell and High Water or Hell on Wheels?
Hell on Wheels? Sorry.
Oh man, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, I finished it. I loved it. I'd really like to have there been more seasons to it, but
Was
of course,
six? I think 6 or 7.
something like that. I finished it, uh, but I think I think they should have done a spinoff of that.
Well, I don't know. It was. I mean, they had a very interesting character, that Southern rebel guy. So if people like rebel types, that the protagonist Cullen Bohannon was like your Southern rebel guy, except he was kind of maneuvered into working for the Union Pacific somehow after the war. And
Yeah, it was a very awesome show. Um, and for any of you that have not seen it, like I know Squib's a real fan, just like myself. Um, there's a lot of history in there, and you can actually, if you know the history of that event, the Golden Spike ceremony, yeah, the Transcontinental Railroad, a lot of that history actually is seen in that show. In fact, this year, I think it was April 15th of this year, marked the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike ceremony.
Somebody, I don't know if it was you or Squib or maybe somebody else on Gun Channels, Jared was saying that was commenting about the steam engine, the biggest steam engine ever. They like reactivated it or rebuilt it or got it working.
The world's largest steam
4014.
locomotive was 4014, also known as a big boy, was a 4884 configured locomotive. Is the world's largest steam locomotive ever built, and still the only largest steam locomotive ever operated, and is owned and operated by Union Pacific Railroad. UP 4014, or the big boy, and UP 844, which is a 484, was used to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. Another rail nerd fact is that Union Pacific has both the world's largest steam and the world's largest diesel locomotives in operation, and that are still in operation and owned by railroads.
So much of America's goods are still shipped by train. People don't realize it until they actually go and see it. When we were driving through the Mojave Desert coming back from Prescott, Arizona. Did I say it right, Prescott?
Yeah.
Prescott.
No,
Prescott.
Yeah, if you say it wrong, then you'll piss people off. But
just like where you're at, Oklahoma, they're not armadillos; they're armadillas.
I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, you're right.
But they have these just like miles and miles and miles of trains just going through the desert, and it was like, couldn't believe how long it would take a train thing to pass it. It looked like you'd take out the binoculars and to see from the beginning to the end, because it was just massive amounts of goods.
Yeah, and I want to make something clear real quick, that I can vouch for you. You are not exaggerating miles and miles of trains. Growing up here where I live, you would be lucky to see anything more than a mile long. Now, trains are getting to be upwards of 2.5 miles long, and you'll see in most trains, you'll see at the head end, you'll see 4 locomotives. Well, one of those locomotives is the only one that's being controlled by manpower. The rest are called distributed power units, or DPUs. And those locomotives are controlled by computer and some type of wireless. I don't know if it's radio or what. I'm sure it's radio frequency, but even these longer trains, you'll see engines at the back of the train pushing on the back of that train, and those pushing units, or those are also called DPU units, are also not manned, and they are operated by the cab unit, or the lead cab unit.
We're gonna have computerized semi trucks they're working on computerized trucking that'll be driving at night on the roads, controlled by computer.
Right.
But this what you're talking about it for all of a sudden I remembered that scene from I think it's a Clint Eastwood movie. Was it a few dollars more? Where he's trying to get Clint Eastwood's character is trying to get information on Lee Van Cleef's character, and the old guy is like, it's all because of the damn trains, damn it. But anyway, the other thing I saw from Alone that it was just and I'll talk about Hell on Wheels first. On Hell on Wheels, the most dangerous part where you were most likely to get hurt really bad was in the whorehouse, because there was no like penicillin or anything like that back there. The cure for social disease was painful. Let's put it like that. So I mean, but on Alone, it's like if you're in a survival situation, you do not want to get a cut. It'll like if you don't have any antibiotics or antibiotic. I couldn't believe they in their first aid kit they had gauze, but they didn't have any like just triple antibiotic cream or anything. It was just like somebody gets hurt, they just put some gauze on it. I mean, with a deep cut, it's like, are you kidding? But that's what they gave them. I think their first aid kit that they gave them sucks. But it's just have some antibiotic, triple antibiotic lotion in your EDC kit, or at least in your first aid kit, because the infection is like, whether you get it by cutting yourself or visiting the Hell on Wheels bar where they have the prostitutes working in the back, and you're most likely to die from an infection of some kind. If the grid goes down, the shit hits the fan.
Back in those days, especially on that particular railroad, something that the show really didn't capture is the amount of deaths that actually occurred while building the railroad.
There's a lot of shooting and fighting and stuff. But
that was the least of their worries. The Union Pacific and the Southern Pacific both had so many accidents. I mean, you could accidents, just overheating,
freezing,
deaths. Yeah, anything that you could imagine dying from without modern medicine happened. I mean, everything. Even something, you mentioned, you made a very good point. Anything as simple as an infection killed lots of people on these rail lines, and that's something that I think was very inaccurate. Is they didn't take into consideration all the deaths that actually occurred just on the manufacturing of that road.
Instead, what they did was they just killed off every good character stupidly.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and I think it was more dramatic to have lots of violence. So there was.
And it's not to say that there wasn't violence back then, but yeah, they kind of glorified the violence instead of. And I was talking with another YouTuber. His handle is Santee. His channel is Arizona Ghost Riders. If you want to learn about the Old West or the 19th century, he's got a lot of good information. And we were discussing that, and he said, yeah, some of it was period accurate and some of it wasn't. And I know they have to take certain liberties in Hollywood for making this stuff. But as somebody who's interested in history, I was interested in the accuracy of some of that stuff. What is interesting is some of the things that were in the series you could actually go to or see, or like in the first episode, the guy says he's got his Remington pointed at him underneath the table, and I went downstairs and pulled my new model Remington out of the safe and brought it up and go, he's talking about this. It's kind of nice to be able to. You could visit some of the towns or see some of the history, or
Did Cullen Bohannon have a LeMat at any point in the series?
No. Those would have been extremely rare anyhow. So, and where he served, Well, he might have he could
Arkansas?
have had access to one. He could have had access. No, was he in Arkansas? Yeah, he's from Mississippi though.
Oh,
So
Mississippi. Right. Okay.
so
Sorry.
I don't know if he was up in Arkansas though. I know he wasn't in Georgia, even though the one guy was blaming him for Andersonville or whatever. And that's another thing. They refer to Andersonville and they actually show some of the deplorable conditions there, and that's somewhat accurate. You can actually visit Andersonville today. It's like done up like a museum, and you're not going to get the full effect of how filthy and nasty it was. But still, there's some things in there that I just thought were somewhat. They're based on history. They're not entirely accurate, but it's enough to maybe get somebody to do some research on their own and go, oh, this is what America used to be like. That's what I like about some of the old series. Even though they kind of
Yeah,
glorify it, you get to say, oh my, people actually live like this. So that's why, when Oklahoma was talking about people dying actually building the railroad, it would have been more interesting to see that, when the nitroglycerin killed all those people in the mine shafts, well, that really happened. The Central Pacific really did use nitro and really did have accidents.
hmm
But they just, I don't think they showed enough of it.
Another thing, you know, you mentioned a minute ago that there was a lot of, of course, there's a lot of history. The name of the show itself was 100% accurate because the town or the community, as you will, that followed that building of that railroad was in fact called Hell on Wheels for that reason.
Yeah, but in the TV series, you notice it really didn't move. They always, like in the first two seasons, they went back to the same place, right?
Yeah,
In reality, it would have moved as the railroad moved. Maybe
Yeah, well, it
not
was
right.
a
every
tent
day,
city.
but
Yeah, you just
yeah.
move the tents.
But
Yeah,
I'm just saying the set. You could tell that they left the set right where it was.
yeah,
They didn't move. I don't know if it moved weekly or monthly or what, but you're not going to lay 4 miles of track a day, and by the end of the week you got 20 miles of track, and you're going to waste all that time moving everybody 20 miles and then move. I realized you can do it by rail, but some of that stuff was moved by horse, and it's just like,
Well, if you're doing if you're filming a show, I mean, you just want to build the set, and then you don't
yeah.
have to move
yeah,
it every 2 weeks.
I know, but they could have done something to make it look more like I don't know, whatever. That's the thing. I understand Hollywood has a budget and blah blah blah. I don't care. I want it to be accurate. That's just what I want.
Right. And see, just to kind of enforce what Squib is saying, where I live, and you can pretty much, if you have ever been in Oklahoma or drove through Oklahoma, most of you know that, or at least not on the interstate, most of you know that have been on the state highways here in Oklahoma, see a town about every 10 miles. And that the reason for that is, and if you're near a railroad, you'll see one about every 5 miles. And the reason for that is because um, on a railroad, you'll lay about, anywhere between 2 to 6 miles of track a day. And if at the end of that day, that's where that town stopped. And every one of those towns pretty much had somebody stay behind. Somebody decided, you know what, I'm done, I'm retiring, this is it for me, I'm staying right here. And that's why a lot of these towns are named after people here in Oklahoma, rather than, and then there's a lot of towns that are named after um, Indians or Indian tribes, stuff like that, have Indian names. Like, for example, let's say for Broken Bow, of course, uh, a lot of Indian names were of something like that. Like Oklahoma, the name itself, the name is, I want to say Chickasaw for red human or red person. Okla I can't remember the name or the tribe, but it was red, and Huma, which is actually the name, the proper the traditional pronouncement or pronunciation of Oklahoma is Oklahoma, and it meant red man. Um, But these towns that are dotted every 5 or 10 miles away from each other uh, are dotted for a reason, and that was either the railroad stopped at the end of the day in that area, or the cattle drives stopped at the end of the day in that area, and then the next day they would go up. For example, the cattle drives, the guys would wake up at the butt crack of dawn and drive their cattle another 10 miles, and at the end of the day, when they reached that 10 miles, they stopped and they pitched up their camp, and that was the town. So that's another thing that wasn't really represented accurately, and I agree with Squib on that. And just to inform why is because at the end of the day, that's usually where a town was built. And the same thing with cattle drives. At the end of the day, every 10 miles, is about how long they would be able to run a herd of cattle down their cattle trails, whether it be, whatever trail that they were on. I happen to live on the Chisholm Trail in Oklahoma, uh, and that trail leads from Mexico all the way up into Nebraska, and that's one of the longest trails in the country.
So is that part of that where they shot Red River?
I've never heard of it.
You've never heard of Red River?
Correct.
The
Is it a movie?
John Wayne
Oh,
movie?
I have not heard of it.
John Wayne, Montgomery Clift. I mean, that was like one of the first westerns. That was just an amazing film. But
I'll look at it, but another thing that people don't understand is the Red River actually starts in New Mexico and goes all the way down into the Gulf, uh, down near
in the film,
southern Arkansas, I believe, or Louisiana.
the film, basically it's about a cattle drive from Texas to Abilene.
Well, Abilene is in Texas.
Well,
It's I'd never heard of an Abilene in Oklahoma, but I'm sure there is. But Abilene is
Let's
in
Google it.
north.
all
Yeah,
right,
Google it because that'd be interesting
Google
to know.
map for the movie Red River. It was on TV the other day. It's a John Wayne film. They had a bunch of John Wayne films on over the weekend. So. Oh, they also
Father's Day.
another. I almost texted you when it was on, but they had Tell It to the Marines was on DCM over the weekend too. But that was such an old black and white movie. I didn't know if you'd be interested just because it was Marines. It was Lon Chaney was in it. It's a pretty old one.
But it was in Abilene, Kansas.
Yeah, it was Abilene, Kansas.
Okay. I mean, that's a possibility. I don't know if it's on the Chisholm Trail, but it's there's a possibility because, like I said, the Chisholm Trail, they would. And another thing, just to add to that little bit of history, what mesquite, what a mesquite tree is. Obviously, Hawaii. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, we don't have them around here in Hawaii, at least.
No, you don't. And
Kiawe.
the only reason, the only reason, see, mesquite is only native to Mexico and South and Central America, and the reason they're spreading like wildfire up here is because cows along the trails would eat the mesquite leaves and the beans, and as they would move up north, they would process them through their stomach and they would pass them, and that's why mesquites are real thick up in this area, is because they're pretty much cow poo. They came from the defecate from cows as they went along these trails, and that's why mesquites are dotted up and down. Well, I wouldn't say dotted. I mean, they're just
Well,
It's such a nuisance for us.
but a lot of people that maybe that aren't into like firearms. I mean, a lot of people that are into firearms are they really like the history of it of it, and that's why
Yeah.
there's collectors that collect firearms because they like the history of the weapons. I mean, even if they're not avid shooters, the history is very interesting. So it's just anyway. So let's see. Alone, trains, power grid, like all of South America was out. The war in it's not a war yet. The oil tankers being targeted in the Gulf. I think I covered most everything in the show except for crypto. I'm saving that for last.
But yeah, I think
He has a whole bunch of mesquite where he lives. Where do you live, Negotiator?
He's in Arizona,
Ah, Arizona.
yeah.
the free state of Arizona.
I know, free. I was had a great time in Prescott.
And see, you know, I'm sure he can. I'm sure he can validate that. You know, if he looks it up. But mesquite's not native to North America at all. They're native to South and Central America. And as the cattle drives, came through, the cows would just pass them, and out of that, fertilizer would grow a mesquite tree. And mesquite are very, 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 very hard to kill. Um, with new technology nowadays, new chemicals, it's getting a lot easier. But you can't just go out and cut a mesquite down and be like, all right, I cut it down, it's gone. Because next month or next year you'll have, 3 or 4 in that area, and before you know it, your entire pasture is just overrun of mesquite.
Well, if all the immigrants from Central America would eat mesquite on their way up, then
Yeah,
plenty of mesquite.
and
Anyway,
the mesquite bean is actually edible.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Where do they grow? I mean, is it on the leaves of the tree or?
Yeah, it's just like any type of for example, like I don't know if you guys over there have mimosa trees, but any beans, they're like a green bean,
Okay, I know
but
what you
they're flat.
mean. So they just fall to the ground basically from the
Yeah,
tree. Okay,
and next
I didn't know they
it's
were edible. Can you people actually cook them or anything or prepare them
I
in any way?
don't know how the preparation is, but they are actually edible. I will look it up, and I'll even do a video. I haven't done any videos in a while, and in fact, I think this is my first video in a long time. I was going to do an update on my garden because although it is doing good, it's also doing horrible. Because for any viewers that might be in Oklahoma that know, we have a grasshopper apocalypse going on. And the other day, I planted 40 watermelons and 80 cantaloupes and about 40 cucumbers. And out of all of it, I have 2 cucumbers, 1 cantaloupe, and 4 watermelons because grasshoppers have completely ate everything
Jeez,
down to dirt.
that sucks. And there's no way
I
to, short
Nope,
of building a greenhouse, there's no way to keep them out, huh?
no. I've even treated. I hated to. I really hated to, but I actually have even treated my garden with 7 dust in it. Um, and just to show you, just to give you an idea as to how vicious the grasshoppers are here, um, I planted 40 watermelons one day. The next day, I got up, went to work on the on the fire truck, came home, planned on putting 7 dust out before they got them all. Came home and could not see hardly any watermelon plants. The next day, after planting 40 watermelons, I came home to 17 plants still standing, and I treated them with 7 dust. um, and they lasted up about 5 days. I treated them. I went out and looked again today. Treated them again. I have 5 watermelons out of 40 left, and
Five out of
I'm
40.
5 out of 40, and I'm fighting to keep them. It's just ridiculous. My onions, um, the onions, they when I came back from Oklahoma City, it looked like somebody went through and cut all the tops off of them because they just the grasshoppers ate them down to the bulb.
Well, the thing here on the Big Island is because we got a mountain. If you have your farm over 2,500 feet, the bugs like it underneath 2,500 feet because it gets too cold. They like it warm. So if you go up high enough in elevation, you don't have as many bug problems.
Yeah. Well, see, down here in Oklahoma, I think we're about, I don't remember what our elevation is, like 13 or 1,400 feet where I'm at. But it's not, this is
Not cool
grasshopper
enough.
country. No, it's
Grasshopper
far from
paradise.
it. Yeah, I mean, heck, our
The price.
winters.
If the shit hits the fan, you can always eat grasshoppers. They're
Yeah,
protein.
you can. But just to give you an idea, yeah, just to give you an idea of how our winters are, this winter we hit record highs of 90 in places. Uh, and this was in February. One of the coldest coldest months of the year is February, and we're hitting record highs at 90 degrees. Um, we've had a few days this winter below freezing. I think the coldest it got was 12. Um, so it's not. Although it does get cold sometimes here in the winter, mostly at night. Um, it's still, you know, it's still a very temperate climate. Um, but you know, it's really hard. It's hit or miss.
Negotiators
Last year,
put some guineas out in your gardens. Chickens will eat grasshoppers. Garden. Right?
yes, they will also eat tomatoes, okra, squash, cucumbers, watermelons, cantaloupes, jalapenos, habaneros. So I've got, it's a catch-22 there.
Guineas are a kind of chicken. I take it.
Yeah, guinea is a type of fowl.
Okay. Well, all I can say is, if I ever start a farm, It'll on the Big Island. It'll be over 2,500 feet too, because I don't want to have to just dump
Yeah,
pesticides all over everything. Um, uh, well, okay. Just reading the external chat here. You have a guinea fowl video, Squib? Oh, he hasn't released it yet.
I haven't released it. It won't be tomorrow, but it'll be this week. I'll be releasing video on my A channel and my B channel tomorrow. But I try to get one video a day, Monday through Friday, out on my primary channel. But
That would be too
sometimes
much
it don't
work.
work out that way. Yeah. I got lots that I can record. It's just how much time do I have to edit? I mean, I've tried to take your advice about doing things in one take, and that does work when I get it that way. But the rest of the time,
It's like Clint Eastwood shoots films.
well, when I've done it, it's worked out really well. But the rest of the time, the other 99% of the time, I'm editing.
Yeah, it's a lot easier if you do it right. But that takes a lot of practice to be able to do something right and have it come out good in one take. You have to kind of really know how to do that. You get used to doing it like that all the time. So,
But,
I mean, Clint.
Sorry. Well, I got videos on all kinds of stuff, and some things are just easier to shoot than others. You were talking about the train, with the pusher in the back and the really long train with all the shipping containers. I have a video of that coming out of Las Vegas, and I did that in one take. That was easy.
There is a Vegas. I need to email you the website. There's a Vegas whiskey experience. I think a convention once a year. I email that website to you because I know you go to Vegas once in a while. I don't know exactly when. But that's on my list of to do things.
Whenever I can. Whenever I can.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I hiccuped.
Oh, that was just a hiccup. I thought you were trying to
Sorry
talk.
about that. I try to be quiet. I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself.
All right. Well, finish this Telmer Dew glass on the rocks I'm drinking. All right. Let's see. What haven't I covered? Got foul. We got Hell on Wheels. We got Alone. Okay, I guess if nobody wants to talk about anything, I'll remark about how incredibly great Bitcoin is doing. It is the dominant cryptocurrency right now. My screen share isn't working, or I would share it with you, but I can look it up. 57.2% Bitcoin dominance out of on CoinMarketCap out of 2,238 cryptos, with a total market cap of all the cryptocurrencies of 288 billion, about 288.5 billion dollars worth of cryptocurrencies. Is 57.2% of that is Bitcoin. I didn't talk about Target going down, and that kind of related to basically Digibyte jumped on. They put out a tweet when Target stopped. That basically all their cash registers stopped working for a few hours in the middle of the day over the weekend, and so on Monday morning their stock got hammered. But basically Digibyte sent out a tweet saying, "Hey, if you were using us for processing all your transactions on the blockchain, Digibyte is one of those." It's like, I have I don't know, it's a penny crypto, right? But it's a very technically valid, good cryptocurrency. But again, until cryptocurrency really gets adopted, and then it's just going to be a novelty until it gets adopted when the banking system fails. Now, what was interesting about that tweet wasn't just the opportunism of, well, if you start using us, that Target will be able to keep their systems running, or they were trying to save a rather flagging price for their cryptocurrency, but it's a valid cryptocurrency, so I still have some of it, but it's a penny crypto. But what's interesting about Digibyte is just that technically it would be actually a very good currency as from a strictly blockchain technical perspective, but that really doesn't matter until people start using it. And Bitcoin is the dominant. That's why it's going up so much. And that's one of the reasons compared to all the altcoins, which have been doing good as well. But I had some fun over the weekend. I watched one video saying how basically if the banking system fails, Bitcoin will be worth $10 million a coin, because based on all the debts that have to be paid off, and if they do that with crypto instead of based on the finite amount of what can actually be minted, due to the mathematics of it, that's what it would be worth. So find your infinity pools and be ready, I guess. but it's one of those things that if you want to have some, have some. If you don't. It's okay. I've been more worried about, just like I was mentioning earlier, just how exactly how many days of my food supply is. It wasn't really what I thought it was after when I did when I calculated for 1,000,000 calories based on how many calories is in the number 10 can of Mountain House, and I calculated back, it was like 432 cans just for one person, just to have 1,000,000 calories per year, and I have nowhere near that much. But when you just look at a big bunch of cans, it's like, oh my God, look at all that. That's a lot of. But then you do the math, and it's like, wake up call. So if you do the math, in my opinion, it's a mathematically inevitable that Deutsche Bank will fail, and being the main hedging holder of hedging derivatives of every other bank on the planet. I mean, I just can't imagine it not failing eventually. Whenever that happens, I don't know, but I think people who have crypto right now have to be feeling just stronger every day, to pull a line from a Chicago song. Feeling stronger every day because it keeps going up. And I think maybe the bear market for crypto has passed, and it sure feels like that. It hit a new high for 2019. But that being said, it's not the only thing. If you're a prepper, you're going to want to be well-rounded prepper. Mouse Toast put out a video. I got like halfway through watching it before the show, about canning and her solar system and her extra freezer. What kind of freezer was that she was talking about that dies when that just what was that she said? Her New Orleans accent.
The deep freeze?
Yeah, the deep freezer, the chest one. That just, how did she put it? When it dies, it just up and dies or something. It croaks when it croaks or something. I mean, I know they make deep freezers that run off of, I guess, solar DC instead of AC. But I've just heard that there's problems with propane, the propane ones, when people try and run propane freezers. But she was talking about her deep cycle batteries and stuff, but I need to finish watching it after the show. The thing about canning your own stuff, and Mouse Toast is like an expert. She's a great cook and an expert canner, unlike me. So the good thing about brand canned foods is that they're good for barter, because people have heard of Del Monte. And but I don't think, like you were saying, Scoop, I don't think she wants to have to barter any of her food, because she's better cook than most people. So I don't blame her. But I mean, if you have to barter sometimes. But brand name stuff is easier to barter than just your home canned stuff, generally, for most people. And I've never gotten into canning for some reason. I'm sure I can think of a lot of excuses why I haven't, but it's funny because I was actually going to talk about AOC slamming Jeff Bezos for becoming a billionaire off of the backs of slave labor wages or starvation wages or something. I don't think $23 an hour plus healthcare and benefits is slave in New York is starvation wages, but the cost of living in New York is kind of ridiculous. But it's just I got all my freeze dried food off of Amazon. So if it wasn't for Amazon, I wouldn't have any number 10 cans. It's like they don't sell number 10 cans around here. You have to get them off of Amazon. So it just, and like if you don't mind a little slower delivery on it, which I don't, it's free shipping and it's cheap compared to, I mean, I won't say it's cheap because I did the math for 1,000,000 calories, and 1,000,000 calories is not cheap for 4 people. I think because I was calculating for Squib's family, if he was going to buy 1 year of food for 4 people off of Amazon for Mountain House, it'd be like $45,000. So it's not necessarily cheap, but just for a single person like me, I just every month I buy a can or two or something, and like this last month I got some extra socks. I got some Darn Tough socks, and a shoehorn. Nothing expensive. I mean, I don't like spend tons of money, but I'll throw in a couple cans onto the order, and I got pasta primavera this month because it was one of the less expensive ones. Uh, Depending on what you get, I kind of have a variety. I don't really get the same thing every time. I just get different ones because if I have to live off the stuff, I don't want it to be the same thing every day. Oh, I know what I was going to mention. Macaroni and cheese alert. One of my subscribers, this person I follow, Valerie Reese, she I didn't know Kraft macaroni has 3 new flavors out. I looked for them at Walmart. They didn't have the new flavors at my Walmart yet. I didn't haven't been to the Safeway since I saw her video, but I think one's white bean. I think it's the pasta is like made out of different things. Like white bean is one of them. You guys can probably Google it or do it whatever
How
search.
could that ever
I'm
be
busy
a
looking.
macaroni product?
It's Kraft macaroni and cheese. It says right it, and they made the macaroni. They made the pasta with white bean or something.
Maybe a vegan thing.
Well, I'll Google it, or I won't use Google. I use a different search engine, but I'll look it up really quick and give you the details. Let's see, Kraft.
At least tell me
macaroni.
that one of them is sriracha.
No, it's not. They don't have a sriracha. You can add your own sriracha sauce. Kraft macaroni, new flavor. Plural. Oops, I spelled new wrong. Kraft mac and cheese. Kraft goes for both. That's 2013. I'll just go to the Kraft mac and cheese site.
I'm looking at Mountain House food here. The chili mac looks better.
I've never tried. I have that, but I haven't opened it.
I ate some of it, and it could have been the chili mac. I really can't remember. It's been so long.
Boy, Mouse Toes would hate this webpage for Kraft macaroni and cheese because she hates it. They have Star Wars shaped. They have Darth Vader macaroni and cheese. Oh my god, Ninja! I've never seen that one before. But where's the new flavors? Come on, products. Blue box. Deluxe. Oh my god, they have macaroni and cheese in like a martini glass or something. Deluxe. I'm trying to find this for you guys. White cheddar and bacon, 4 cheese. I'm gonna have to go look at Valerie Reese's channel to find it out because it's not on here. And this is their website. They don't have their own cheese. All right, let me go look at it. Just so I can get this done and not have to carry over this until next week. What the new flavors are. I don't want to leave you all wondering what the new mac and cheese flavors are. That would be a terrible thing to just have to worry about over the weekend. All right. I know she responded to I left a comment and she responded. Let me just scroll down my comments. Come on. Oh, great. People are actually. Here it is. comments. I thought the video that she made was just, it took her too long to get everything out. It was just dragged on. Okay, white bean and pasta, cauliflower pasta, and whole grain pasta. So white bean pasta, cauliflower.
It sounds like a wheat or gluten alternative.
And whole grain. She said it tasted, her husband said it tasted different, but good. And I know that like Dusty's daughter loves macaroni. I don't know if people will buy this new stuff, but they might, just because it's craft and they want just for a change. You know, maybe it's like give it to Dusty's daughters. They'll eat any kind of craft macaroni probably and see what they think. I would have bought some if they had it, just to see what the new stuff was like.
Yeah, like I've seen people using cauliflower to make pizza crust. There's the cauliflower thing is starting to catch on, I guess, as an alternative to bread or a dough, maybe, because that's all pasta. A lot of people don't realize that's all pasta is just boiled dough. It's just some kind of a wheat or flour dough that's just been boiled to make spaghetti noodles. That's why you can actually get wheat spaghetti noodles or wheat pasta noodles. All pasta is just a boiled dough, and the same thing with like um, the like spring rolls or egg rolls is a rice dough or rice, what they call rice paper, but it's just a dough made out of rice that they use to well, not maybe not the egg rolls, but spring rolls. It's just a rice paper that is just pretty much rice that has been pureed into a dough and then flattened out to make, you know, the wrappers and stuff for everything.
I don't know if I should go out for dinner tonight because all I had today was a bagel, so and whiskey. So
It's too late for me. It's already, let's see, what time is it here? It's 11:30 here at night. So yeah.
Yeah, well, Mekes is still open. The guy from Mekes was on in the paper, the owner, because we're having homeless problems here again, in Kona, and they were that when they had the King Kamea parade, there were some old homeless ladies yelling at the children as they were parading by or something. For some guy, the police rounded them up and escorted them out of the way of the parade or something, the homeless people. But apparently we had, like I mentioned, I think a couple weeks ago, two homeless prostitutes came onto the condo property and they hopped the fence with a couple of their Johns and raided the hot tub and pool. And so one police officer showed up because one of the residents called the police because they were making so much noise at 2 a.m. So the police showed up around 2:30 in the morning. And because there were two guys there, I guess, and not just the two girls, they called for backup. So when I don't know what happened, but the word must have gotten out on the radio that there were like two naked women in a hot tub, and the officer needed assistance because the whole police force showed up, and we have it on video from the security cameras. But of the whole entire Kona police force hopping over the fence. So yeah, and then we had to drain the hot tub because the ladies were not exactly well. Let's just say they were dirty and diseased, and the hot tub, just the water had to be changed. It smelled bad the next morning. So, and nobody was going in it the way it was. So completely drained it, let it air dry in the sun for a few hours before we refilled it. And so, yeah, the homeless problem is kind of getting out of control all over the place. I don't know what it is, but it's not because Amazon is paying slave wages. I mean, I don't know why AOC thinks that $23 an hour and plus health benefits and life insurance and a bunch of other benefits is starvation wages, but I don't think $23 an hour is terrible. But I don't work for Amazon, so I guess that's between them and their employees. Uh, well, so are you Oklahoma? Are you going to build an atlatl yourself, or a rabbit stick, or anything? Or are you just going to stick with your crossbow?
I've actually, I would love to. I'd love to have an atlatl on darts. Also, not only that, I would love to build my own atlatl on darts. But something as intricate as that would require a lot of time and patience, and both of those things I do not have a lot of. So,
Well, hopefully
but
you have
as
more time than you think you have, but I can understand at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah, time for me is not very, very well there anymore. Um, but yeah, as far as for right now, definitely sticking with a crossbow. But if it hits the fan, then I kind of know the basic game plan of how to make an atlatl on darts. With the darts is the easiest thing. Is you just find a long, tall sapling, and you just pretty much just cut it, um, and just kind of cure it. Allow the wood to cure so it harden. If you have a good hard wood, and then go from there. Um, the longbow, all this stuff, I can make if I had the patience and the time and the will to actually do it. I could do it, but the longbow is a little bit more difficult. I'd have to start out with something because
You build a
to
longbow
make
and a recurve.
well, um, if we're talking SHTF stuff and homemade or stuff like that, then of course I can't just go out and make cams for a recurve bow. Um, so I'd have to use you know I'm pretty sure that people could if they actually sit down with the right amount of stuff that they needed. Making the cams out of bone
Well,
and stuff. But
cams.
Recurve wouldn't have cams. Compound's got cams.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you
yeah.
a recurve.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking. I don't know why I was thinking compound when he said recurve, but I'm tired. I'm very, very tired. I've
Well,
not
I
had
wanted
a
to
lot
thank
of sleep
you
in the
and Swift
last
for
few weeks.
always showing up on my shows most of the time. It's really great to be able to get panelists to talk about like stuff that I like to talk about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
because I'm crazy. So yeah, thank you for coming on my shows all the time. It's great. It's great to have friends. I don't have so many that I could afford to lose them or throw them away on
yeah.
stupid, silly stuff. But thanks for coming on every week. You guys are great.
I appreciate it.
And
I appreciate you letting me on the show. Some people would kick me out by now.
why would I kick you off? Oh man. So okay, so we're gonna close out this show for tonight. Thanks everyone for tuning in and giving us a thumbs up or whatever. And if there's something you want to talk us out, or if there's something you want us to talk about on prepping or firearms, or any of the
Anything survival or SHTF apocalypse related, there's a comment section down below for that. Let us know. We'd
yeah.
love to hear your suggestions, and we'd love to have some new content, something else to talk about.
Yeah, I do have some videos that I'm working on putting out really soon. So uh, stay tuned, or I don't know if I have a notification button, hit that, and you'll get notified when I post them. But thanks for tuning in and to another Lock and Load show, and we'll see you next week.